Oh, g'day guys, Mr. Bennett here. Today we're just going to go through some options for the optimisation project. Now, probably the most basic thing I could say is look at some examples you've seen through your test and through your textbook and come up with an application that relates to something you're interested in. Alright, so I know Mrs. Mitchell's shown you some examples of optimization where we use that for a production line scenario. So you could use that as an example for a project. So you could look at what's involved in doing any particular task. It could be building a car, which would be quite complex, to making some sort of product. That would be quite good. Here's an example of doing a trip. So if you did a trip, the scenarios that you could look at would be how many ways can I get from, say, Adelaide to Melbourne? Alright, so you could be looking at which is the quickest way, the shortest way. You could be doing things like if you have to go and visit a relative at a certain place, so you have to go through a town, how much does that add on to your trip? Alright, so you'd be looking at those sort of scenarios that relate. Alright, so and then you can put that sort of map, you can copy and paste that map and you can change things. So like here I've got there is a pathway, so you can highlight which is the shortest pathway, which way you can actually do that. So part of that process you could do a flow rate as well. You can look at the number of cars that you can get through a certain part per hour, as an example. So that's one idea. The other idea that I thought was a really good one for you is to, but with this one here, I would be using Google Maps. Okay, so if you get Google Maps up, and this is my idea. Here's a good idea in terms of if you're travelling to Adelaide Oval from Victor Harbour. Right, how long is it going to take you to get to Adelaide to Victor Harbour? Well, Google Maps will tell you it should take you an hour and 18. All right. It could be that you're going to work, so maybe it's not Adelaide Oval, maybe it's somewhere like the CBD. Now, with this, you've got different options that you can actually get to Adelaide. So if I drag that map over there, I could go that way. All right, so you could look at that particular route to Adelaide Oval. I could go all the way over there. All right, that's going to take me an hour and 47. So if I then drag that back over here and drag the rest of that back over there, get the idea? So you can look at different ways of using that, so you can have your own map showing you how to get from Victor to Adelaide. Now, one of the things that you would probably want to do from that, you need to do some research. So if you're doing some research on that scenario, you might go to the RAA website, or you might go to the RTA, which is the Road Transport Authority, and you might get flow rates. Right? So again, if you're doing that type of project, you would be looking to come up with some sort of network. So you'd have a key heading for different junctions for roads. So obviously you might go down South Road, or you might go down Marion Road, or you might go down Goulburn Road. Might be some examples. So there might be a junction point at the bottom of Darlington there, where you make a choice where you're going to go from that. So you draw your road networks, and then you could be talking about the flow of cars per hour. How many cars can you get per hour through that particular network? You could then have scenarios like you've got roadworks, okay, which is slowing the traffic down, so you're limiting that. You could be looking at a car accident where the road is actually blocked off, so that would be another thing that you would have to consider. So again, it's fairly similar to the one that you're driving to Melbourne or you're going to the Gold Coast, doing that sort of scenario. Now, I was thinking with the one that goes to Adelaide, you could be talking about the Southern Expressway, okay? So and how that might change the rate or the time that it takes you to get to Adelaide. I think one of the issues with the Southern Expressway will be once you get down to the bottom of that, I don't think they've fixed up the Darlington Road at this stage. Now, I believe there's a proposal out for that, so you might want to have a look on the internet and see if you can find some information about that and how that's going to work. So get the idea? So you can actually look at a real example and base it on. Now, if you don't find the data for cars per hour, there's nothing to say you can't just make them up. Alright, so you get a bit of an idea about how that works. So you can, on these particular nodes here, you could have cars per hour, you could have travelling time for that length of road. Alright, so you can look at a whole range of different scenarios. Now the other thing is I was thinking of, obviously I've had some mates who work in the mining industry, and part of their role is all they do is scheduling. So they actually schedule maintenance, so that's part of their role. So they organise people to come in so they can minimise the time a particular part of the mine might be down for. With the Southern Expressway, obviously there would have been a schedule for things to be done in order to get that completed. So, obviously, got all these particular bridges that had to be done. You've got all the roadworks like the blasting to cut away the rock and all that sort of stuff had to be done, and then you had to obviously make the road surface as well. So you could be looking at that scenario in terms of doing a scheduling that might link with that particular project. The other thing is you need to actually provide all the materials for that, so you might have a number of different suppliers for that, where you might want to do a linear programming scenario. Alright, so there's lots of options for that particular one. This one here, which my son did last year, which was a ski scenario. Well, I quite like this one. So what he did was he looked at a certain part of the mountain, alright, from a ski thing. You can get that off the internet, and that's actually a bit more of a updated sort of version of that. And then from that particular part, you do your own map. Alright, so this is the top of Mount Blue Cow Central, and he actually had all the different runs. So you've got arrows on the runs, which direction they go. Obviously green being for beginners, blue for intermediate skiers, and black would be for skiers who are advanced. Alright, so you could look at things like the total number of runs that you can actually do in this area of the mountain. So if you could ski maybe green or blue, or so if you're a beginner, how many particular options do you have for that? Alright, if you could ski green and blue, how many options would you have? If you could ski anything, how many different runs could you do? Alright, so that's one scenario there. You could look at different combinations of that. The idea is you do one map and you cut and paste that, and you just keep adding to it. This one here is looking at the distances of the actual runs and how long it takes for you to actually do that part of the run. So you'd be looking at how far do you ski, and then how long is it going to take you to get from A to B. Alright, so looking at your critical path, so that's the longest path, isn't it? So you can look at a lot of what if scenarios based on information that you want to collect, and looking at maybe your ski patrol. You need to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. Which route do you take? How long is it? What's the furthest time it could be? Now, the last scenario there that you'd probably want to do is you'd be looking at the capacity of the chairlifts to take people up to key positions. So we've got this quad chair that takes 2,000 or nearly 3,000 people per hour, and so on. So if you want to increase the capacity of that particular network, then you might need to either upgrade how many seats you have on the lift. So instead of making it a quad, you might make it a 12 or an 8-person chair. So therefore we can get a lot more people per hour up there. Or you may need to build another ski lift somewhere. Alright, so you got the idea. You can actually extend it that way, as an example. Now I know Mrs. Mitchell's gone through an example of a production of a particular product using the task, and I believe we showed you Marika ovens from last year. Right, so that's another option as well that you might want to consider. Probably best thing would be to, if you have any questions or things about this project, what would it be like, maybe have a chat to Mrs. Mitchell or myself about that. And the key thing is, you know, you might be happy to just get a C. If that's the case, then obviously the road network one would be quite easy, because you could certainly go through that and do the straightforward stuff. But to get an A, you're going to need to really extend the idea and make it a real application if you can. Just another example of something you could do is, you could be looking at, say, a particular site like our school, and you could be talking about a networking scenario. So, you know, like flow capacity, or you could do the shortest wiring setup if you're going to actually provide internet around the school. So you could be investigating a bit of information about that. Obviously we have wireless points, but those wireless points need to also be hardwired. So where, you know, if you're looking at a building design, you would need to set that up in terms of least amount of cable used, possibly, if that would work. There's lots of different sort of scenarios with that. You could be looking at a phone network. You could be looking at wiring up a house using electricity. Right? So what would be, you know, the best way to do that in terms to minimise the amount of cable that you need. So there are other examples that you could look at. So again, like as I said, try and think of something that's a little bit different. Try and think of something that's actually going to give you scope to actually extend that with lots of what if scenarios, because that's where you get your marks. Alright, so good luck with that, and make sure you talk to someone if you need some help.